Let's chant the Om. O great and nameless One, in whom we live and move and have our very being, elevate us now. Let the light of your Sun flood us and harmonize us with all of your creation. Let us know the reality of union in the face of the illusion of separation. In the name of Christ Jesus, in the presence and name of our Mother Mary, and in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. That's the end of the class. Patricia, you had suggested on Facebook that we might talk a little bit about the subtle breath.
Right.
And actually that dovetails with the topic at hand, which is the virgin birth. Okay. Last Sunday we spent some time talking about the virgin birth and what that means esoterically. And I want to go over some of that and take it further, because we're really just rushing towards the winter solstice and Christmas shortly thereafter. We're not going to have another class between now and the next Sunday service, which is the beginning of December. Then there will be one class before Christmas. And it would be a crying shame for us to miss the experience of the cosmic birth. Okay. So let's talk about the breath just a bit. When we get quiet and begin to hear the volume and the overwhelming mass of thoughts that go cascading through our mind, we begin to see, as we sit with it for a while, and sit with it we must. You can't not have a spiritual practice. You must sit with these things. We begin to discover the correlation between breath and thinking. If you want to slow the thoughts down, slow your breath. Okay. The space between thoughts and the space between breaths is the field in which we want to sink shafts, mine shafts. That's where the gold is. It's in that space between. Okay. And so we start to practice thinking more softly and breathing more subtly. A definition of samadhi is a breathless state. Right? A suspension of all bodily functions. Basically shuts it down, goes into hibernation. The meditative state is one that is so quiet and so receptive and so alive and throbbing with potential and life that we dare not disturb it. And that's where the subtle breath starts to come in. That's where I started to play with it some years ago, was that I didn't want even the sound of my breathing, not even the action of my breathing, to disturb that place, that experience. Now all this does is allow us to remember, to recall that which we already know, which is that we are eternal, infinite beings of light, life, and love, that we are the Son of God, that we are the Christ. That you are a God being, a self, a cell in the mind of the Creator. A single facet on this infinitely beautiful gemstone. A facet through which the entire brilliance and beauty of the whole gem is perceived. It's distinct and unique from every other facet. And yet the brilliance of all the facets in the entire gem is reflected and radiated through you. Through you. That subtle breath helps us to remember that. It allows everything that isn't that to drop away. Because there's nothing that we have to do in order to have this experience, this remembrance, remembering, that putting back together again. There's nothing that we have to do, we just have to stop doing. Right? And the subtle breath is one of those things that helps us to realize that we have control over the processes that seem to be out of control most of the time. Okay. So, having set that as the backdrop for the conversation, let's talk about solstice for a minute. We have two solstices, in the summer and the winter. Solstice is derived from two words, sol, meaning sun, and sistere, which means to stand still. Because at those two times of the year, the sun appears to stand still. The days are getting shorter right now. The darkness is growing. Every day is getting less and less light, and the nighttime is expanding, and it continues to do that. Day is shrinking, night is expanding until December 21st, at which time the process seems to stop. The days aren't shrinking anymore. The nighttime isn't getting any longer. And it stays that way for the next 3 days. And then it starts to reverse the process where the day starts to get longer. And that's Christmas. That's Christmas Eve. Right? Okay. This is such a wonderful time of the year because it introduces us to the esoteric side of the Bible story and the life of Jesus and the events of the Bible. And we begin to discover, if we really work with this thing, that what we have in the Bible is a roadmap to attainment. A roadmap to the initiations. And it takes us all the way through from the Annunciation and the Mary's being impregnated by the Holy Spirit on through to the birth and in Bethlehem and on through the events of the life of Jesus as noted in the Bible, and then culminating, of course, in the trial, the crucifixion, the resurrection, and the ascension. These are among, no matter what else they are internal paths that we follow. It's the internal path of initiation. And it's lined out for you in this. We just need to discover it and not just take it at face value and in a fundamental kind of a way. So having said that, now we look at Mary. Mary has been prepared for many, many lifetimes. It's been said that she is the highest initiate to ever have taken a female form up until that point. Be that as it may, she is confronted by an archangel, okay, who tells her that she's going to get pregnant. And she says, how can this be? I don't know a man. And he said, well, the Holy Spirit will overshadow you, and you will conceive, and the thing that you will conceive, therefore, will be holy, and will be called the Son of God, and all that. And she says, be it unto me according to thy word. Okay, that's the key. Be it unto me according to thy word. Okay. As we talked about last Sunday, we are looking for the virgin territory in our own subconscious that can be thrown open to the light of day. What does that mean? There is a part of us which has never incarnated, that doesn't know the hand of matter. It has never known anything but presence. That's always there. Okay. There is a part of our mind which is only aware of that place. This is a subconscious part of mind because it is below the level of our everyday consciousness, awareness. And then there's another part of the subconscious which is filled with a bunch of bleh, right? All the things that have bombarded it and been inserted into it and impressed upon it, either through events of our upbringing and growing up and life, or through our own thinking, because every thought that we think is a seed that is planted in that fertile substance of the subconscious, and it sinks down and roots and it grows and it's all there. Okay. And we're kind of aware of that part of our subconscious. We're more and more aware of it. We know the influences in our lives that made us feel insecure. Maybe I'm a little insecure, and I think it's probably because I had this and that happen when I was growing up, or I came from a broken home, or whatever it is. We understand the cause and effect of some of these things. Okay. And so it's a sort of subconscious. It's really accessible. But we also know that there's a layer beneath what we're aware of, and that is beneath even what we are comfortable looking at or opening ourselves to, that we have never dealt with, right? That's the virgin territory that we need to discover. Okay. So it came through when in the sermon last Sunday about archaeologists, and I hadn't really thought of it until that moment, but how an archaeologist can be on a dig and they know that there's a village that was supposed to be in this little area here, and they start gingerly dig around here and there, and they start to realize that there's a difference between the soil that had been disturbed, that had been previously excavated, and maybe it was post holes, maybe it was foundations for buildings, and the soil that had never been. Okay. And even if it's been hundreds or thousands of years, that there's something that had happened to the structure of the soil that is identifiable and makes it unique once it's been messed with. And that's the process that we have as we are going in, if we're getting quieter and we are asking the universe, the great self in which we live, to reveal these deeper levels that had never come to the light of day, so that they may be infused with the Christ light, so that we may conceive at a deeper level than we had ever conceived before, because it's at the level of the conception determines the rest of the process on through the crucifixion and resurrection. We will experience a crucifixion, a resurrection, and an ascension. But we're not going to experience it at a level that's any deeper than the conception. But it takes a lot of guts. As a matter of fact, it takes a willingness to die. Because as we start to let go of our finite identity, and letting go of that is critical in this process, because that's all tied up in conscious mind and that layer of subconscious. We let go of these things and we begin to feel like we're actually dying. The body and the mind remember that feeling. The ego rebels. It says, wait a minute, dude, what are you doing up there? What's this program? The ego's job is self-preservation. It's got a great job, and that's why it's there. But it becomes kind of a stumbling block when we want to let go of the thing that the ego is preserving. And the best advice I'd ever been given and that I can ever give when it comes to dealing with the feeling that you are melting, like the witch, I'm melting, that non-existence will never come. We may be that drop of water placed in the ocean, but we never stop being. And the goal of all this excavation, of course, is to get to that place where all that is happening is that we are, body, mind, and soul, sitting at the feet of the Christ within and listening and being taught. That's going on now for you. But you don't always know that because of all this other stuff. So we're getting rid of all that other stuff so that you can remember who you are. An extension of love. An extension of life. So when you're praying, you're meditating, you're opening yourself to the revelation, the revealing of self. You find that you're digging through the antique garbage dump that is filled with the relics and bones of dead things. And you just keep digging away. Yep. Dig, 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 moving away. Dig, 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 moving away. Because where you want to be is not where it was disturbed, but where you've never been, where nobody has touched before. So you invite all of the boogeymen to come into your life, to come into your heart, to come into your mind. You embrace them with love and compassion. And you invite them. Come. It's okay. Encourage the process. Resist not evil. You aren't those things any more than you are your body. So invite them to come into the light of day. Embrace them in love. And keep moving forward, deeper. Because there is a pulse of radiant energy that is filled with consciousness, with Christ consciousness. A pulse that radiates from the core of you out into every part of your body and your mind, your atmosphere. And it's that pulse that we open ourselves to then and say, "Be it unto me according to thy word." Be it unto me according to thy word. This isn't religious stuff. We're talking about the science of self. What happens in us and how it's connected to what happens in the cosmos on the solar level. Because again, we're talking about the solstice and the sun standing still and the march through the heavens. And there's that ancient saying, as above, so below. Or that which is within is that which is without. There is no within and without. It does not exist. It's all within, if we want to call it that. The fact that you have your eyes open and can see the sun in the sky, and the clouds and the trees and the mountains and all the beauty that's around us means that it's inside of you. That's why astrology works. That's why this business about the solstices and equinoxes, is, there should be like an equinox eye or something. Why they are important and why they are part of the path. I hear people talk about religions as though, and the proof that they can debunk religions is that they are just mimicking the various pagan traditions. Well, Jesus wasn't born on the 25th of, blah, blah, blah. Get over it. There's something to be had in the process here, to be discovered in this, that is so valuable, that can help you for the rest of your days if you can sync with it, get connected with that internalization of the Bible stories. And the Bhagavad Gita. What do we think is happening with Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield when the two great armies are going to collide and they're standing in the chariot talking? That's the whole thing. That's the whole Bhagavad Gita. That is it. Who is Krishna? Who is Arjuna? What's the chariot? What are these different forces that are arrayed on the field that are going to have this clash? What is jihad? We hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. Internalize these things. We have to do that. It's likely that there will be a new vocabulary. As time goes on. That better matches the experience of the internal life in the new age. And I know people who feel that it's important for them to find those new words, to create that new lexicon. For the rest of us, it's important to take what we've got and make it real. So if we say God, and our neighbor thinks that God is an old guy in the clouds throwing down lightning bolts or whatever they think that this happens, a throne and all of that, does that mean that we should discard the word God? Or do we marry it to an internal experience so that when we say the word, now, it has depth of meaning, and because we share the same word with countless millions of others, they become the beneficiaries of that higher consciousness of that word that's behind that word. That's true with everything that we can think of in the spiritual realm. They become hackneyed phrases. the ancient Christian mysteries predate Jesus. He was acting them out in his life. I say that because I believe that he lived and he did these things. I believe that was part of his work to do. If somebody else doesn't believe that he lived or not, I don't care. That doesn't even matter. Because the pattern is what's important. That's what we need to get hold of. What's that pattern of the crucifixion, the resurrection, and the ascension? What does that mean for me as a soul on the path? What are the nuances that are uncovered and portrayed in these stories? Who is Pilate? Who is Herod? Who are the Egyptians? What is Egypt? We take those things in and wrestle with them, connect them, internalize these things, make them part of you, so that you're not just another Bible-thumping Yahoo.
So, keep digging. So the question is just, how do you do that?
And as I was intimating, the only way that I know of is to find a space within myself which is connected to presence. Even if I'm not very good at it yet, just some place where I can find it, and then stand in that place and say, come here, come hither, all you little demons, because I'm going to love you up here. I'm inviting you. Prayer works. And if we are praying for this revelation, this revealing of the deeper incrustations, so that they can be shed, then we can anticipate and expect that we will have waves of things bubbling up. Sometimes you say, did he have to answer that prayer of all the prayers that that's the one? So there's all sorts of techniques and all sorts of methods that teachers and gurus and mystics and saints and whatnot have had over the millennia that will help us get to this discovery of that sacred place within, and that connection that we have with the self that we are and have always been. Okay, that reconnection. There's been breathing techniques, there's been various yogic techniques, there's spiritual exercises, there's mantras, there's you name it, there's fasting, there's, right? Just go to the bookstore, lots and lots to read. Jesus broke it down so simply. This is the, you gotta love the guy. Right? Love God with your whole heart, your whole mind, your whole soul, and your whole strength, right? And love your neighbor as self. On these two commandments hang all the law and prophets. The law and prophets are all the things that you would need to do to get there. All these spiritual disciplines. The law is huge in the Judaic tradition. It's all about the law, right? The laws of this and laws of that. Now, what to do here and don't do this and do that, and wash this and don't, all that stuff. Of the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, thy mind, and thy strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and prophets. Well, if we're doing that, and we're making that our spiritual discipline, and we're very quickly discovering behind that practice this place of peace, this place of light and open spaciousness within ourselves, then it's incumbent on us to invite all the children of our making, our creations, to come into this light and be healed and be raised. And that help?
Mm-hmm.
So the solstice where the sun appears to stop for a day, or it's an equilibrium between light and dark?
It's not, actually. That's the equinoxes.
Oh.
Yeah. The other two deals. So you've got the vernal and the autumnal equinox. And that's where you have, at that moment, equal day and night, equinox.
Mm-hmm.
Equal day and night. And so that's where the balance is. So there are temple services that are connected to all four of those, as well as new moon, full moon.
So psychologically, that's a very different flavor than going from, I guess, weighted to the dark side, just moving into the light, or vice versa.
Okay, so let's delve into that a little bit, because you talk about Yuletide greetings, and Santa Claus is on every corner ringing bells, and everybody's joy, and it's one of the grumpiest times of the year. People are nasty. You go driving in to find a place to go park when you're at the shopping mall, it's like
Predators.
it is. It's so funny, because it's exactly this. There's an eclipsing of that part of the spiritual impulse, and what we identify with. What's happening? Well, that eclipsing allows what to happen? The garbage to surface. Okay? That's what happens. You eclipse the sun, and everything that's dark starts to bubble up. And people and critters that enjoy the dark start scurrying around doing their nefarious things, right? That's in us. That's what happens in us. It's a time when people have to deal with some emotional stuff. Most folks don't do a real good job of that, of dealing with it. They identify with the wrong part of the process. But that's the cycles that this goes through. That allows this to happen on an individual scale, and on a collective scale, and on a earth-wide scale. The planet experiences this on a planetary scale. Okay.
Well, is it planetary wide, or is it sort of like because of the
northern southern hemispheres? Yeah,
and you've got the different seasons happening at different times.
Right.
But that equinox is universal, regardless of what season you're in.
No. It's tied. It's the same thing. So in Australia, it's flipped. They still have Christmas. They need to change that. These things were definitely northern hemisphere centric.
Yes.
Right. We kind of made up all this stuff up here and then sent our missionaries down there.
That could work.
Well, I like this idea of the virgin soil untouched by personal experience or even collective experience, sensory impressions, thought forms, just something. It's pleasing to think of something that's in the substratum of ourself that is untouched by sensory perception or experience.
And pure.
Huh?
And pure.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the interesting thing in my mind has always been that we are a circle with a dot in the center. That's also the symbol for God, right? Without beginning, without end. We are the dot. That's the part that we're talking about. At the center. That dot at the center is the center of everything. That's the point of connection with everything. Everything from the Creator onto every facet of manifestation of creation. Okay, so there we are, that dot. And we expand and experience through our periphery. Okay. Through the circumference of us. So far, so good. We're still the dot, circle, sphere, bubble. We're filling the space of this. There's no beginning and end to the dot. The dot doesn't just have an edge to it. It's expanded, it's extended itself into this circumference. And then we transplant our foci, the focus of our experience, of self-experience, from the center to the circumference, to the periphery. and we turn around and we behold our own center. This is why what it means, man, know thyself. That's why that is important. That's all good. It's all part of the program. But it makes two where there had been one. Okay. That's so now we're saying I am this and I want to be my center. Because I got lost in the process. We've so thoroughly transplanted our consciousness into the periphery that we forgot that we were the dot in the center. So now we turn around, we look and say, oh boy, I really am yearning to be that. Look how beautiful that is. And all we need to do, I say all, is to let go of our attachments and our aversions that are the binders to the periphery. Our attachments and our aversions. And we're automatically home. There's a gravitational pull to our own center. It doesn't mean that we stopped being this sphere. As a matter of fact, it's bigger. But
so I see how attachments can keep you there. How do aversions do that? Is aversion just another kind of attachment?
absolutely, absolutely.
Do you think, well, I'm not attached to that?
An attraction is also the flip side of an aversion, I think.
Yeah.
Can be, I don't know.
Look at the things.
God, then that seems like a
Look at the
desire.
things that you desire, and look at the things that you're afraid of. Okay. So we desire security, we desire money or whatever that goes along with all of that. We desire companionship, a mate. We desire a certain sense of stability and peace in our lives. We desire health. We're afraid of sickness and discord and being destitute and living under a bridge and all those things. They're flip sides of those things. And you have to be able to look at all those things squarely and say, be it unto me according to thy word. Because that we're opening ourselves to this pulse that's coming to us. And as long as we're still holding on to these things, grasping, then we can't be receiving with our open arms this pulse. Be it unto me according to thy word.
So I had a question arise. It's kind of philosophical. I don't know that there's an easy answer to it. I also study the Course in Miracles. I know you mentioned that you do. And the Course seems to, if I read it right, propose this notion that everything that we see in the world of creation is a projection that man made and not a creation, which I have a hard time with that because it looks to me like there's a lot of creation going on in the universe. And then it says that God creates, man makes, and God creates, but never really addresses what it is that God creates. It seems to allude to a kingdom of heaven that is God's creation, which we do not know in this world. And then people sort of say, well, what God, and then you said, well, we're extensions of God's love. The Course likes to promote that idea. I was wondering if you have any thoughts that tie up the question embedded in whether this is a creation or something we made. And
Right, the
creation
difference
is something
between
other
what
than
is made and what is created is very central in the Course. And it's beautiful. That's a beautiful distinction. In Eastern philosophy, they look at conditioned and unconditioned reality. Okay, so that which is real is unconditioned. It has no conditions placed on it.
So that's the virgin soil. Yes?
Yes. What is unreal is conditioned. It's dependent on us to keep it alive, to give it meaning. That's another thing that you'll find in the Course, right? Is it, what's that chair? Do you see the chair? Or do you see what it means? See? And so we put all the meanings on things. And there's layers and layers of things that prevent us from seeing what is. So if we look out and see the mountains, we look at the chairs and all the houses and we say, okay, well, obviously men made that. Okay, not so obvious when you get into it a little deeper, but when you go out in nature and you look and see the broad horizon and there's mountains and there's trees and you say, well, come on now. Man didn't make that. Even if he planted the seed for those trees, he didn't make the seed. And yet, most people see only what things mean. They only see their ideas of things. So when the Buddha was under the Bodhi tree and had an awakening, the awakening was that the scales dropped from his eyes and he could see what was without the conditions placed on it. Everything's brighter, more intense, more vibrant. It's like, that's, by the way, why people like to travel. Or don't. Because they don't have context. They're going to some place that they don't have a lot of images. Most of us just look at our own images of things. We fill in continually painting our own pictures of things because been there, done that. See, I've got the pictures to prove it. They're in my head. But you get thrown into a really unusual situation where you don't have, your underpinnings are gone. And then all of a sudden you're more alert and you're looking and say, whoa, smell those things cooking in the street bazaar and look at the way that people are dressed and, the language and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm going to get lost but this isn't, yeah. So the trick is to do that today, here, now. Just haul off and smack yourself across the face. Wake up, because most people are in some stage of sleep most of the time. And so they're experiencing what people experience in sleep, and that's dreams. So they have a dream world filled with all the beauty of dreams and all of the nightmares of dreams. But it's dreams. It's not
If
real.
I experience what God creates, does all of this evaporate and there's no perception of what appears to me to be the world?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, sure, there's a level of connection with the divine mind that is before anything. So it's being. The Hindus call it Sat Chit Ananda. This being, consciousness, and bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. And that sense of being, not being this and not being that, takes you to primal earth. Again, that virgin place.
Mm-hmm. There's a paradoxical saying, and I don't remember how it goes exactly. I'm sure you've heard it. Only Brahman is real. Brahman is the world, which makes everything as real as anything else. You can't even make a possible distinction between what's real and what's not. The Course seems to make this distinction that this is a dream, and your only true desire is to awake from it.
Right, and so it's not these aren't opposing statements, because everything is self, everything is Brahman, everything is God. Atman is Brahman. Okay, self is God. There is nothing that isn't spirit. There isn't really this dichotomy between the material world and spiritual world. It's all spirit. Matter is spirit. What else could it be? So
that's fighting words to a lot of Course students that I know.
But okay, so that's the one reality. The other side is, what's your everyday experience?
Co-creator.
See, what are you experiencing now? Or do you have that experience of connection with the One? And do you see the glowing luminosity of creation in everything that's around you? And know and feel the connection so that you can say, yes, the Father and I are one, or Atman is Brahman, or it's all self or all God? No. Chances are you don't feel that all the time. And for the times that you don't feel it, that's where the Course is spot on. And every other methodology that says, here's the path to follow to get there. So Advaita Vedanta, okay, non-dualism, says there's nothing to do. You're already self. Where are you going? There's nowhere to go. You're already there. You don't need to meditate. You don't need to have a spiritual discipline. You just have to accept it. Jesus said it's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. What are you going to do to earn it? Okay? That's real. That's true. I believe that. All that I believe in. I also know that I need to have, for whatever reason, I need to have some steps, some things to do. Whether it's just to placate my ego, or it's because I'm just not there yet to the point where I can just let go to that degree where I am immersed with the ocean of God.
It's like, I live in a basement. My room's in the basement. I can walk down to the basement and find my way through. All right, without a light, but it helps if I have a flashlight. It makes it easier. So that's kind of what I think.
I like that. So this is an age-old debate that goes on as with spiritual seekers of one kind or another. Do you need a discipline or don't? Is it faith? Are you saved by faith, or are you saved by works? There's another one. That's how the Christians boiled it down. There are different schools
I
of
think
thought.
we're neurologically wired up to have a predisposition for one or the other. I know bhaktis who just want to open the heart and meditate or chant.
Mm-hmm.
Chanting and techniques have never worked for me. I tend to be always trying to reason things out, and it doesn't. I can't follow just about anything that's been prescribed as being the way to do it.
And one isn't better than the other. So what you just described are basically the same sides of a coin. You have a method that's your method. These are the steps that you go through. Bhakti practitioners will have theirs. You know, karma will have theirs. Karma yogis will have theirs. You know, whatever it is, we all have a certain methodology that we'll follow. But that's all the same side of the same coin.
Hardwired into the human beast.
It is, because we like to do. We need to feel that we're accomplishing something. The other side of the coin is, of myself I do nothing. It is the Father in me that does the works. So Jesus says, seek and you will find, knock and it will be open to you. Okay, two things to do. Okay, seeking and knocking. Then he says, take no thought for yourself what you shall put on. Because look at Solomon in all his glory wasn't arrayed like the flowers. Why would you, by taking thought for yourself, can you make yourself 1 cubit bigger? You know, he goes through this whole thing, right? At the same time, it'll make you nuts.
Yeah.
Do this, don't do anything. But do this, but don't do anything. There's a creative tension. And if I can get this across, I've done a good job, I think. There's a creative tension that exists by the simultaneous embracing of both. Not one or the other, but the simultaneous embracing of both. So it's not this and not that. It's also this and that. You know, and
Yeah, there was another paradox in the Course that only recently came to my mind as a question. Because it said that that which is all encompassing, it was talking about love. It was talking about love as being hate. Love has an opposite, which is hate. Hate has an opposite, which is love. And I thought, well, no, love has no opposite. But it says love is the opposite of love is hate. The opposite of hate is love. That which is all encompassing has no opposite. So you almost have to embrace the hate and the love to get to the both and spot, which seems not what people want to
Although maybe
consider doing.
But maybe that's what you were talking about earlier, is embracing all of the demons and let everything in, and before you get to that other place.
yeah.
I don't know.
So there's a sequel to the Course, right? The sequel to the Course of Miracles is called A Course of Love, right? It came about some, 15 years later.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the premise there is that love and fear are the polar opposites.
Yeah.
Okay, and that
does.
And again, whether you're going to say hate or fear, it's our embracing, the simultaneous embracing of the totality of these experiences that allows us to transcend them. Or not even transcend them, allows us to lift them up. So there's a funny thing that happens when we think about transcending these things, and that is we leave them behind doing whatever they're doing down there, and we're going to be up here. And that has never worked because the foundation crumbles and everything collapses behind that. It might take lifetimes before that happens, but it will collapse. You've got to bring those things up with you.
But we got to bring up the whole collective unconscious. We have to do it for all of humanity.
Right.
One man has died for all, therefore all men have died. That is it. You can't not do that. You can pretend that you're doing it for selfish reasons, but there's no way to pull it off. You cannot experience enlightenment or, nirvana or whatever we want to call any of this. You can't have the illumination and realization in our tradition if it's for selfish reasons. It has to be altruistic, truly altruistic. It's the bodhisattva vow that Buddhists would take. That I seek enlightenment for the liberation of all sentient beings. I seek enlightenment for the liberation of all sentient beings. Period. That's it. So that's the two commandments.